All right, we are live. Want to welcome everybody. Give everyone a few seconds to kind of get in the room and get going here. How you doing, Taylor?
Just had a delicious lunch. Sounds like you did too.
Oh yeah. Having a good Monday so far.
Great Monday.
Mm.
Yes, sir. It's Victory Monday. We
It
got a
is
Brown
Victory
victory
Monday.
on the board. Let's see here. Just got a notification.
All right, we'll give everyone another couple seconds here to get in the room. All right. Everybody. All right, everybody. My name's Nate Stansberry. I'm the managing director of Rust Belt Recruiting. I'm joined by Taylor Evans. Taylor is our founder, runs the show here at Rust Belt. Taylor, what are we going to talk about today?
So today's conversation is titled "How to Win Top Industrial Talent." So again, you can read it any and everywhere that it's harder than ever to attract talented industrial workforce, be that on the production floor or in the office or professional roles. And so we want to give you some insights on how to set your company up for success on attracting these valuable and skilled workers to and through your door.
Absolutely. And one thing that I really like to emphasize, you really got to find something that is unique to your business. As a small business, there are plenty of disadvantages, but there are tons of advantages too. And it really starts with your employer value proposition. And what I mean by having an advantage as a small business is you've got the ability to change the pay benefits sometimes. You've got a lot more flexibility, and really understanding where you stack up and where you can win is huge, absolutely huge, in winning the war, if you will, for talent. And it's a war for talent out there right now. And it starts with kind of knowing where you stack up and how you're positioned to win. One thing, when I look at whether it's sales or in this case recruiting, in a lot of ways talent acquisition, you're selling your company, you're selling the opportunity. So anytime we think about the process of talent acquisition, and this is true for any organization, any company, it really starts with building a talent funnel or a pipeline, right? And understanding the buckets associated with a talent funnel. And as we see it, it really begins with attraction, and then obviously goes into selection and integration. Before we get into that, because we're going to talk a little bit about how to funnel candidates and truly what we mean when we say, attraction, selection, and integration, and maybe some benchmarks around that. And every environment's going to be a little bit different. But before we get into that, I got to tell you, it starts with having a goal in mind and really knowing what the desired outcome is. And it sounds so stupid, but the reality is, I think we we know we have a problem as a company. Um, and that's, often why we have an opening or a need internally. But, you know, we don't take the time to really dive into how, or what this role is set out to kind of cure, or the issues that this particular role is trying to solve, right? And so often we try to solve internal issues with people. It's not to say, that the recruiting teams or recruiting guys, look, we definitely want you to solve company problems with people. Don't get me wrong. But before we start getting into any kind of search work, we want to know everything that's going to go into this role, right? And so when we think about starting with the end in mind, that means having a clear budget, having clear metrics associated with the successful outcome of this new hire or this person, and truly understanding, as I mentioned before, the key accountabilities that this person is going to be in charge of when they enter your organization. Also, throughout the funnel, whether it's that attraction, selection, and integration portion, you really want to understand where your metrics are in each and every piece, because that's going to tell you where you're off. And you don't have to rely on gut feel or third party information. You can validate your own information, your own results internally. If you're watching this, how many people are applying for your jobs? How many people are, qualified applicants are coming into your funnel? How many people are going through your entire process? How many offers do you got? Those are the things that we want to kind of start understanding and breaking down, as we go through a typical talent funnel. And so, starting off with attraction, everybody, hey, attraction gets all the attention. That's the number one. So many people think, recruiting is all about attraction, and in some ways it is. Ultimately, the goal for a company is to have as many quality applicants as humanly possible, right? And so when I say quality applicants, that means, people that fit the bill on paper. So like we said before, we want to enter every single search with kind of an ideal outcome. And so the goal of the attraction piece for any company out there is to truly have as many qualified, that means they meet the qualifications on paper, right? Whether it's budget, scope, background, whatever it might be, entering your top funnel as possible. And there's really a couple ways that we get, to engage, I guess, or drive results within the attraction bucket. I would say for those of you who are, maybe your talent acquisition internally, that means you work for a company right now. Hey, look, this means having a good website, having a good web presence. This means having, or at least understanding what your reviews are, and know what external messaging is out there, and making sure that messaging is reflective in your positioning of the role, and that you're taking advantage of any networks that are naturally occurring for your organization, right? We call that recruitment marketing, right? And that's truly just attracting candidates, but it starts with having the bones or the infrastructure, a decent web presence. I mean, I think for a lot of people, it's fine to still have like signs out front or whatever, or in your building or in your whatever real estate. But the reality is, most job searches are in fact a digital one. So if you haven't invested in your digital infrastructure recently, you really need to reimagine what that looks like. This is a little bit more unique to recruiters, whether you're in-house or I guess, external or a third party, sourcing, finding great candidates, and that, for, maybe you're, more hands-on roles, maybe that's getting involved in your community. Maybe that's getting involved in veterans associations or different organizations that are going to have a true pulse on your community. So I think community outreach is huge for sourcing candidates within a community setting, and for some more of the hands-on roles, because often you're not going to find these people on LinkedIn. And then as you kind of look for more of your professional, I think engineers, supervisor level and beyond, marketers, sales professionals, and the like, utilizing tools like LinkedIn, specifically the recruiter seats, and then sourcing people, actively engaging them, having people do outreach in order to bring people into your funnel. It has its advantages, has its disadvantages too. We don't have to get into that, but if people have questions about it, this is the difference between an active candidate. Active candidate's going to come through your messaging and your marketing. Typically, they're interested in your opportunity and your company. And a more passive candidate is going to come through more sourcing channels. And again, there's advantages and disadvantages to both. Next up, selection. Listen, when most companies, I would say, when we think about there being a bottleneck or issues in a process, it a lot of times comes in the selection process. Selection is simple, right? Like, how do we identify the ideal candidate? And I would also say this: how do we usher them through our internal processes so that our internal stakeholders are satiated, whether they're hiring managers or there are other compliance or regulatory hurdles that need to be crossed or jumped over, or whatever you want to call it. That selection process has to also include a great candidate experience, right? And when we think about a candidate experience, I always say how you start is often how you finish with a company. So, if you've applied somewhere and they take, 3 weeks to get back to you, and it's another 2 weeks in a process, and there's a lack of transparency or communication, that's a selection process issue, right? And what you'd see there, if you're in-house and you're part of an HR team or talent acquisition team, you would have a lot of qualified candidates come into your funnel, but you just wouldn't ever get them in process. And oftentimes this is because hiring managers, they're really busy. They've got a lot going on. Hey, that's fine. Or the process isn't well documented or followed by all. And let me tell you something. If you have an interview process that no one follows, you don't have a process. That's inclusive of any policy, any process you got. Processes and policies are only as good as people are actually going to follow them. And so when we think about a selection process, it truly needs to be measured on how long it takes to fill a role and how efficiently and effectively are candidates moving through the process. And what you would see is, like I said, a lot of people applying and just not a lot of people getting through. And it starts with really defining what that interview process looks like and communicating those expectations to your internal and external shareholders. So like an external person would be obviously the candidate. It could also be a recruiter you're working with, though. It's really important to make sure that everyone knows what they should expect in the process. People who are interviewing, there's so much anxiety around a job search, especially these days, that people have to make the best possible decision. And so if you tell people what the process is going to take, they then can either opt in or opt out of your process and allow you some time to kind of, figure out and maneuver or adjust as, in order to meet their demands and the company demands, right? So it's really huge. Selection itself, it needs to be open. It needs to be appropriate. The lower the wage, the shorter the process. If you can work for entry-level wages, that means you need a job. And so it can't be a long, drawn-out process for someone just coming into a company as an on-ramp. So just some food for thought as you think about the selection process. Have a great candidate experience. Make sure that the process is appropriate. And part of a great, appropriate candidate experience is being transparent about the entirety of the interview process, right? And that will endear not only, because I can tell you this too, there are so many times where we'll interview people and maybe it just doesn't work out. Like, think about it. Like, you may have 10 people apply for a job and they may all be qualified, but you're only going to hire one of them. That means there's 9 potential future candidates out there for you if you treat them well. And part of treating them well is having a great selection process and treating them like people. Um, which brings me to integration. And this is for all you HR people out there and some of you hiring manager. Like I said in the last segment, how you start is often how you finish. And having some forethought and a welcoming and informative first few weeks, it goes a very long way. People can tell, whether or not you've planned for them, whether or not you've thought through the hiring decision. You want this, you've spent so much time and effort, energy, money, selecting someone and getting them in the door, especially in a highly competitive market. Set them up for success. And ultimately, the way we kind of look at it, at least internally from like an agency standpoint, is like, how many people are actually saying yes to the job, right? How many people are showing up and saying, accepted offers to actual starts? But if I were in-house, if I was part of an internal talent acquisition team, how many people are there in that first 90-day period? And I'd survey those people. Those are your people. So when you think about measuring proper integration, in your entire hiring process, I think a 90-day check-in with all new hires, just to find out how their experience was, would they recommend people to work there, really getting some benchmarks, like, will go a long way. But it starts with making sure. I always tell, whenever there's a new hire at a company, one of my favorite things to say is like, all right, what are they doing the first week? Right? Like, they've accepted the job maybe or whatever. What are they doing the first week? What's that look like? And you just see most of them like, oh no, like they start panicking, right? Getting nervous. And that's good, because you'd rather that than, 2, 3, 4 weeks down the road, this new hire shows up and it's like, oh my gosh, like, I haven't thought about this. I've been so busy. It's like, okay, well, this person's starting today. Let's pour into them. Let's actually make them welcome. We do a great job at Rust Belt. Taylor, I would commend you for that. I've been here now a little over 2 years, and for every single hire that comes in here, they get a book. Their desk is laid out for them. You make an emphasis on that. You've got their binder, their name, all of the templates, everything they should know. And I think it makes a huge difference for someone coming into an organization. And I'm sure you would agree.
I can remember, Nate, a time where I started at an organization, and when I arrived to my office, I realized it was a storage closet, and I spent my first half day at the organization cleaning out and setting up my office, and it left an indelible impression on me. And I always knew I wanted to be that employer, because we talk about it all the time, Nate. Those first 2 weeks, we say this to the employee that is joining the organization point blank. Your perspective now is as valuable as it will ever be, because eventually people go from, big eyes to, their focus narrows. They come in and do their job. I admit I'm probably more blind to some of our shortcomings here at Rust Belt than I would care to admit, right? But that's because I see all the good, right? You're blind to stuff. So you constantly have to be asking questions, empower that voice of the employee. Hey, what do you see? Like, challenge every assumption here. Challenge me, challenge us, challenge what we do. And as a good progressive organization, we have to accept those challenges, and not only accept them, but actually act on them if they require, or give a really good answer why something is the way it is. And it can't just be because we've always done it that way. So, Nate, I know we talk about this all the time, and I'm kind of jumping in here, but the team has to feel like they have an empowered voice for an organization to grow. And The space has to be there, and it can't just be a space in the break room with a little box that says suggestions, and it's got like cobwebs on it, it's kind of dirty, no one actually looks at it. It actually has to be something that like people can see is being opened and considered.
Absolutely. And to echo your point, I find that usually people in their first 90 days have a really good perspective on the organization, on the company, are coming in, with a fresh perspective because they haven't been there before, but also have been able to be immersed enough to have a decent understanding of the institutional knowledge of a company where the most impact, I guess, feedback, I shouldn't say it, the best feedback can be at that 90-day mark. So if you're an HR person out there and you're a hiring manager, get that feedback early. Don't wait for someone to be there a year or two before asking them some questions. And it can go a long way. And it's part of that integration process. We think about really ideal scenarios, and yeah, we focus in the industrial sector, mostly manufacturing, but I think this goes without saying. This can be a sales organization. This can be a lot of different places. Ideal scenario involves a few things, at least for me, right? And we work in over 40 environments every year, and deliver at a high level and a high quality. I love to see some lower wage entry points that are simple to train and elevate people from as part of the strategy. And let me explain that just a little bit. So it can be a customer service type role. It can be even an outbound sales role. It's in some cases, in some rare cases, right? It can be a warehouse role. It could be a entry quality role or an entry general labor role. We're going to train people, hands down. We are going to train people in the future, no matter what sector you're in. You better get comfortable with that. And having some low wage entry points where you can engage people, get them into your organization quickly, and assess their aptitude and attitude in order to kind of elevate them throughout the company. That is going to be one part of the strategy for success. Another, referrals. When you go to a company, you should be able to look out around the room. I remember I've been in, leadership seats in a few companies at this point, and it can be an all hands meeting. I remember standing up saying, "Okay, how many of you here because you know somebody here?" And you watch the whole room raise their hand. That's when you know you got the right culture, because people are going home and they're telling their friends and they're hitting people up, and you don't have to have this giant bonus program set up. In fact, it can be an issue sometimes, especially if you don't follow it. You can have one too. I think if you're going to pay us, you should pay your own team. And Taylor, you say that all the time on sales calls. But the truth of the matter is, if you've got a great culture and you got great opportunities, people will come. And you really need to give people that opportunity to bring in friends, family. That's where your best team members are going to come from. And those are the people who are out in the communities right now, engaging with top talent that are passive, and I'm going to promise you that referral networks are absolutely huge. If you use referral partners for your sales process, but you don't for your talent acquisition process, you're losing them. You're losing most. Think about your good sales that come into your organization. Think about like those warm leads, friend of a friend, friend of the business. It's the exact same thing. And so make sure you figure out. And if your referral program is not working, you have a problem. All right? Like, you have a problem. Figure out why it's not working, and don't throw money at it. Like, figure out why people ask the question, would you refer someone to work here? and give them a score 1 through 10. 10 being hell yeah, there's 10 of my friends work here, or 1, I'm looking for a job, I barely work here. See where you rank. Start figuring out. Ask that tough question. Referral networks are so important to a long-term talent strategy. We've talked about this employer value proposition, and it's true. Figure out where and what you can offer as an employer. Make sure it's understood and highlighted during the process, right? Don't play heads up with Amazon or Walmart or any of these other places on price, right? Find out what makes you unique and then lean into that and make sure that people come to your organization. It can be your core values, but it can also be your flexibility. It can be anything. Like, just find that voice and lean into it. Obviously, have a well thought out process that helps attract, select, and integrate. And I think a well thought out doesn't mean it's one size fits all. Every role is going to have certain nuances about it. But when we think about building a culture, it comes with shared experiences. I think that in-person events are so important because they are shared experiences. When you think about maybe major milestones in your life, good and bad, like getting a group of people together in some type of fashion offers a shared experience. Weddings, funerals. I mean, these kind of crazy, but it's true. And so having a process that is equally well thought out over time, where it's like, hey, I remember on my lunch with the team, I've seen it happen. And a shared experience can be like having lunch with the team before you get an offer, or a shared experience can be a first week in office. I got to sit in every single desk in the company. That's what you want to create. Those are the things that are going to help keep people in those seats. And then obviously having a trusted partner for those hard to find roles, right? Or situations. And we're going to get into some of the situations, because I think that, third party recruiting or agency recruiters, there's a lot of good ones. There's a lot of bad ones. The key here is what situations, and we're going to dissect those next. What situations do we feel we can add value? Any agency, whether it's recruiting agency or marketing or digital agency, those, we're not free. And so I think that it's important to understand where agencies, and especially us, right? We're hosting this thing. Where do we really add value? And we're going to get into some of those scenarios right now. And then obviously we'll have time for questions at the end. But I think it's important to kind of like, okay, when would I use an agency? Here's a couple situations that kind of come to mind. Taylor, I've been doing all the talking here. I could let you drive a little bit, but it's totally up to you. We think about adding equipment to a facility, adding shifts. You've got a short-term ramp up in demand. It's a heavier lift than maybe your HR team is used to. And it needs to be now. It needs to be right now. And so when you think about bringing an agency in, this would almost be like the RPO environment, recruitment process outsourcing. We call it RBO, right? But this is where the team is going to come right alongside your team and just add some extra muscle, some extra people power. Companies that this is going to work for, obviously small to mid-sized companies with high volume, needs, multiple shift, a lean TA team. Maybe it's a shared talent acquisition is a shared function amongst a couple of departments or people. And you just don't have the tools, or nor do you want to invest the time in getting those tools up to speed. We're just adding a third shift. This is a one-time investment. And we need to get somebody here who's going to quarterback the process. Types of roles we see this working for in this RBO environment or RPO environment: laborers, machine operators, welders. Again, these are higher volume roles. When we think about adding a shift, and this is just FYI, it's good to have a leadership core intact who already understands the company, and maybe they're only going to commit to working on that shift for a couple months. But that's going to really allow us to add a lot of velocity to the recruiting process and getting up to speed. In speaking to that, a lot of our clients, they just don't have the bandwidth, right? They have, maybe they're, 100-person facility. They have one or two HR professionals. Those professionals are largely tasked with the administrative and general HR needs of a company, which are substantial when it comes to policy and people ops and benefits administration and payroll often. They aren't going to have the bandwidth to actually get it. And that's where relying on a vendor like Rust Belt Recruiting to come alongside. And with our team, they're really unique. Our team is made up of industry professionals who've done it. We do this for a variety of clients currently. It's a lot of work and requires a high degree of control. But a trusted partner with the right people in place can certainly make all the difference in the world, because with these higher volume situations, velocity is key, and you really need to get, I guess a lot of people in the mix and a major focus on that outcome. This is the obvious one. All right. Finding hard to find highly skilled people. Often in this scenario where we're going to be working with a mid-size or larger company, these are going to be larger fees. Okay. We think about, plant managers, or we think highly technical roles with a lot of, I guess, nuance in the role. And the internal team, which may be robust, it takes a dedicated recruiter focused on this for weeks at a time in order to build a pipeline up and execute and really bring a robust, talent, offering right to the table. In order to build up that pipeline we were talking about, it might be someone's full-time job. It certainly is here. With our recruiters, they are focused day in, day out on only a handful of searches, especially in those highly technical searches. And again, controller, plant manager, business development, but it really could be, quite a variety of more design engineers. This is a situation where, the price tag can be high, but it's certainly worth it. The emphasis here is your team, and I guess in both scenarios, is focused on other things. It allows HR or talent acquisition to focus on keeping the talent and developing the talent internally, or handling the HR processes internally, versus focusing on going out and finding this type of talent. All right. A final situation. It definitely mirrors the first, first one, but this is truly change management. We think about, a company who, and private equity is entering the conversation, especially in the industrial sector, and has for a while. If your company is on a growth trajectory that includes acquisition or change management and there are short-term needs, within talent acquisition, having a partner who can act as a central talent acquisition partner, right? Like a centralized business service, if you will, is huge. That just keeps everything straight and allows continuity as your company continues to expand and acquire new businesses. This is, it allows, again, those processes and the organization to have continuity in process, which we've already kind of covered is super important to making sure you get a desired outcome. Where we see this kind of working in our case, we see it mostly with engineers, robotics, technology. I guess we also see it in precision machining, fluid systems. We see this type of work not just in the high technology space, but really all across the board within manufacturing. And again, as we kind of discussed, allowing a partner like Rust Belt to handle this type of work just is going to allow your processes to really be centralized, well followed, and organized. All right. Just as a little bit of a recap, what are the advantages of recruitment outsourcing, right? Essentially it's an on-demand talent strategy, which we discussed a little bit, allows you to, kind of take the burden off your team, access to resources. We have the latest. We spend hundreds of thousands a year for our ATS, our job boards, sponsorships, our ability to directly source candidates, the top talent, as well as our internal databases. Our access to resources is second to none. We also work in this space every single day. This is what we do. This is what we're good at. We're able to, if your salary is out of whack or there are other best practices or interview things or tips or tricks or whatever that we see that might be problematic, we're going to tell you, and we're going to be able to tell you what works in similar environments as yours. Moreover, and I know I've been harping on this, you can prioritize your key company initiatives. That means your HR team can focus on the business of those humans who are on the floor, who are in your company right now. You can work on, fixing any issues, making sure that people want to stay, that you're not scaling problems. That's truly the root of HR, right? Is to make sure that the right people are always in the right seats. And that's huge. And this is where working with Rust Belt Recruiting, or any agency for that matter, makes sense. And if your other agency partners aren't providing this level of service, you're just not getting the value. And then of course you don't have a good view of recruitment or third-party agency. The difference, which we've kind of highlighted here, industry specific, we're flexible fee structures. We only do direct hire. We don't represent temporary or temp to perm hires. We are an engaged partner. We take on a limited amount of work so your team can focus on filling those roles. And we've got a ton of experience in talent acquisition and human resources in this setting. These are the key differentiators that we see helping to deliver the best available talent for your organization. And something we're very proud of and happy to highlight. Taylor, what are you thinking, man?
I think you just gave a great presentation, and I appreciate you taking us through it.
Thank you, sir. For more information, you can reach out to us. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, you and I both really enjoy doing these consultations and connecting with companies, and we can point to examples where companies came to us looking to use us, and we actually talk ourselves out of an engagement, because again, we want to be good stewards of the companies that we're working with, and sometimes a little good karma goes a longer way than a good payday for us. And so Happy to have a free consultation with you, a 30-minute conversation, just understanding what you're going through and what's going on. And if we can help you through a little bit of advice or whatever, the world will keep on turning. And if it's more than that, happy to engage as a recruiting partner for your company. So certainly have a really good online presence. You can see on the bottom right, be it on LinkedIn or our website, you can find out more about our company, industry trends, the whole 9 yards. And if you want to reach Nate or I directly, you can see our contact info right there on the screen. Be happy to connect with you one-on-one. So really appreciate everyone joining us on today's call or video conference with LinkedIn Live, and looking forward to our next interaction with each one of you, whenever and wherever that may be.
All right. I know we've got some time for Q&A. We didn't have any queued up. So what we might do, if there aren't any questions right now, because I know that's a lot of information, please just ask your questions in the comments section on LinkedIn to this webinar, which should be posted a little bit later today. And we'll answer them for the group and for anybody who wants to see it. I think it's important that, we love this conversation. We love this space. We want to be here as a resource for you. And as mentioned, as Taylor mentioned before, if it works out where we're working together, great. But we want you to have the best information possible. And again, we'd be happy to answer some real questions in real time, but it might benefit the group to write those questions down. Just write them down in the comments section and we'll answer them there. And we'd be happy to do that as well.
Cool.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, everybody.